Hello everyone. So this video is going to just be a very quick walkthrough of how to use our data sheet, what you can expect in this data sheet, and then how to use our lineup optimizer. So to get started, you can see here we have our sheet breakdown, and then we also have the links for complicated statistics. The sheet breakdown is just a description of each of the sheets you can expect to find in this workbook. And then the links for the complicated statistics are some articles I've written or YouTube videos I've made explaining the topic in the left-hand column. Over here on the left, we have 5 or 6 of the more important things you need to know before you get to using this data sheet. If you're watching this video, you might not need to read as many of these. I'll just kind of touch through some of the more important ones right now. The data in the following sheets is color-coded, which hopefully will make them easier to read. Pretty self-explanatory, but a green background indicates a positive data point for a player, and a red background indicates a negative data point for a player. If you're having trouble understanding a certain column, so for example, if you don't know what the line means, you can go ahead and click on the column. So I'll do that in here actually. And when you do that, a little box will come up giving you a bit of additional explanation on what that column means. Something to note is that this feature with the clicking and then also some of the other features, including our lineup optimizer, are only available in Excel. If you don't have Excel and you use Google Sheets, there's definitely still some good data here for informational purposes, but you're not going to be able to use our lineup optimizer. A couple other things before you get started with this. I just explained that certain columns may be confusing, so you can go ahead and click on the top of them. And then last thing I'm going to explain is the importance of injuries in all daily fantasy sports, but especially NBA daily fantasy sports. So this is kind of just a bit of a disclaimer for our projections. But we release our data sheets at or approximately 2 hours before the day's main slate. So if the main slate of games was starting at 7, we'll try and release our data sheet around 5, maybe 5:15. And we do this because it's right after the injury reports typically release. So we want to get you the information with the most up-to-date injury news that we can, while still giving you time to make optimize your lineup and play around with the data and really get a sense of everything that you're looking at. But it's important to note that in the NBA, last-second injury news often comes out right before tip-off. And obviously, in this workbook, where when you download it, the data isn't going to update at 6:58. So it's important for you to note that if you are using this workbook and our lineup optimizer, you should also be checking the injury reports that the NBA puts out all the way up until tip-off. All right, so that should kind of give you a summary of what to expect. You can read through the last few points yourself if you want, but I'll move over to the lineup optimizer. And the lineup optimizer is really the most exciting part of the sheet, at least in my opinion. And this is where you really have the ability to kind of customize our projections based off of what you've seen on the previous sheets or your own research. And you also have the ability to build lineups around certain players that you think are critical for your lineup for the night, or certain players that you just think can't necessarily be in your lineup in any way, shape, or form. And the ways you can do that are through these 2 columns that are highlighted light orange. Unless you're super familiar with Excel, I would not touch any of the other columns because you do risk creating a situation where the Excel solver is unable to find an optimal solution if you alter any of the other cells. So stick to just altering the 2 columns that are covered in or that are shaded light orange. So the first thing I'm going to kind of talk about here is the adjustments that you're able to make to our projected points. We feel pretty good about our projected points, but obviously there are cases where we're way off, and there are cases where you might know better than we do. And if there's a case like that, for example, if you think tonight our projection for Sabonis at 48 points is way too low, then you can go ahead and you can adjust that. So I'll input a 2 here, for example, and you can see that adjustment reflected in your projected points column. And as you can see when I clicked here, these are the points that the model is going to use to optimize your lineup. So now we can see that Sabonis is projected for 50 points. On the other hand, let's say um, let's say you think that we're projecting Giannis for way too many points. You can go ahead and you can input -3, and now Giannis is only projected for 51. So hopefully that makes sense. Um, and I'll kind of move along to this next column now. The next column is locking or excluding players. This is pretty self-explanatory again. I'll click on it. You can read that if you want. But what you're going to do here is you're going to enter a Y if you want to lock a player into your lineup, and you're going to enter an N if you want to exclude a player from your lineup. So the reason you'd want to do this is, let's say you think Kawhi is going to have a great night. Obviously, you could adjust his points, but if you create too much of an adjustment, then you're going to create a situation where you're projecting your total lineup is projected for an unrealistic amount of points. So there are two ways I can get Kawhi in my lineup. Just to explain what I just said a little bit more, I could put a ridiculous number here, and now Kawhi is obviously going to be in my optimal lineup because he's projected for 70 points at just 8,800. Or I could do a more modest projection, and I could also go ahead and lock him in. And then now that we've locked Kawhi into our lineup, what you're going to see is that when we optimize, both Kawhi and Sabonis are going to be in our lineup no matter what. So essentially, we're building our lineup around Kawhi and Sabonis. And we're also saying, based off what I've said in this column, that we don't want to play Russell Westbrook. And maybe this is because you think Westbrook's in a terrible matchup, or maybe this is because you think a ton of other people are going to play Westbrook and he's going to be at really high ownership, or there could be any number of reasons. But this feature right here, the lock or exclude, is going to allow you to build your lineup based on certain players that you want in it and certain players that you want out of it. So now that you have that down, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to actually optimize your lineup. So what you're going to do is you're going to come up here to the bar at the top. You're going to click Data. Then you're going to come over here, all the way over here to the right, and you're going to click Solver. If you don't see Solver, you might see something like Analysis Tools or Solver Add-in. If you see that, go ahead and click on it, and then click Solver Add-in. Then you're going to click OK, and then Solver should pop up here. Once you see Solver, click Solver, and then you're going to click Solve. Make sure you don't change anything here. If you do, it's probably not going to work. But you can click Solve, and you can see mine actually just happened really fast. But depending on the computer you have and how much data you have open, it could either take, I put 20 seconds, but that took about 2. It could take anywhere from 5 seconds to a couple minutes. And then you can see here now my optimal lineup. So you can see the players that are selected are given a 1 in this column. And also, kind of to make it easier to see, there's a yellow background behind the players with a 1. And in this case, we have Sabonis, which is we obviously are going to have because we locked him into our lineup. We have Drummond. We have Fred VanVleet. We have Kawhi, Al Horford, and then to fill out our lineup, we took Dwayne Bacon, Damian Dotson, and Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot. So just to give you a bit more of a sense of how that worked, Solver, which is a built-in function to Excel, looked at all the possible permutations of lineups in it, given the constraints that we had. So it took our constraints, which is a $5,000 or $50,000 salary cap, a total of 8 players, at least 1 point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, and center, at least 3 guards, and at least 3 forwards. And then it went ahead and looked at every possible lineup of players that could be created with those constraints. And remember, we applied a couple additional constraints, which are that Kawhi must be in the lineup and Sabonis must be in the lineup, and then also that Westbrook can't be in it. And from those permutations, it gave us the one that has the highest projected points. So yeah, I mean, I hope that makes sense. You can see here that your starting five is automatically reflected in this little table, so you won't have to look anywhere for that. You will kind of have to look for your last three guys, which are typically at the bottom. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope this was clear for you. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to us. Our email is contactus@analyticcity.com. Thanks.